live.
We're all on this journey, whether we're conscious of it or not. It's a quest for meaning. And yet, even if this is an unconscious trip or a conscious trip, there's this piece of the journey that, what did the Buddha say? I am the whole and the privy. It's amazing. There's this whole concept of not meaning, but meaninglessness. And today I want to talk about, can we even have meaning without this? I'm going to just start with a buckshot message. I'm going to throw a whole bunch of quotes at you. Master Eckhart, God is not found in the soul by adding anything, but by the process of subtraction. Rainier Maria Rilke, I feel closer to what language cannot reach. And Starhawk, we can know the dark and dream it into a new image. Again, from Master Eckhart, the ground of the soul is dark. T.S. Eliot writes, I said to my soul, be still and let the dark come upon you, which shall be the darkness of God. And again from Rilke, no matter how deeply I go down into myself, my God is dark and like a webbing made of hundreds of roots that drink in silence. And we can go on, and I actually will go on and on. But I would be remiss if I didn't go to Shakespeare at least a little bit. This is what he says on meaninglessness. Tomorrow, and tomorrow, and tomorrow creeps in this petty pace from day to day, to the last syllable of recorded time, and all our yesterdays have lighted fools the way to dusty death. Out, out, brief candle. Life's but a walking shadow, a pole player that struts and frets his hour upon the stage, and then is heard no more. It is a tale told by an idiot, full of sound and fury, signifying nothing. This piece of meaninglessness has been with us since the very beginning. And the whole thing about meaninglessness is we don't know everything there is to know about meaning. So there's got to be this place for it. And what was it Yalom said in his book on existential psychotherapy? How does a being who needs meaning find meaning in a universe that has no meaning? So today, I want to talk a little bit about meaninglessness. Meaninglessness, the nothingness, the hole in the privy. What was it Jesus said? Unless the seed is pushed away from the light and into the dark, it will not grow. And yet, when I talk about meaninglessness, I think about the social evil of it, the ennui in a society that has no meaning, that's struggling. Because I'm going to suggest that America and the world right now is at a crisis of meaning. And that the more we are able to embrace the meaninglessness as a social evil and as a spiritual necessity, the more we will be able to give birth to a new understanding, a fresh meaning of life, being, and consciousness. And I will also suggest that if we do not confront and address the meaninglessness of life, then we will have a meaningless life. So, my cohorts, Bob and Marianne, I want to welcome you all. And I also want to welcome our listeners and invite you to get in touch with us at Redhawkthedeepend at gmail.com. We've got listeners in Australia, Latvia, and England. We'd love to hear from you. Seriously, write me, Redhawkthedeepend at gmail.com. So, Marianne, are you with me?
I am here.
Her picture's intermittent today, so I'll have to be checking on that. What say you when I talk about meaninglessness? Oh, I think we might have...
I think that can you hear me? Or
yeah.
Have I...
Keep going. We got
okay.
you.
Yeah, apparently I'm having issues with my internet connections. So So when I think of meaninglessness, I think of, first of all, what tiny creatures we are in this vast universe and how small we can be. And I think that once we can get rid of everything that we think we know and pare that all down, that is the only time that we can really discover what really matters. And so the quotes that you said at the beginning, that's what that made me think of was, you know,
Oh dear.
we have to get rid of all of the meaning that we've placed on things. And are you hearing me?
Yeah,
or,
we got you.
Oh, okay. Because I heard you say, oh dear. So,
Well, you're intermittent.
but anyway, so I think once we get, okay. So once we get rid of no, that's the only time we are able to open ourselves up to what really matters. So I'll leave it there.
All right. Bob, how about you? What do you say?
Well, let me flip to the other side and start with the search for meaning. Most social psychologists put that right at the top of their list for what it means to be a human. It's the search for our place in the universe, our reason for being. And the thing about it is that the meaning we assign to things and to ourselves is very fluid. It's changing all the time. And as soon as we start to grasp onto any one thing and think that's what the true meaning is, it kind of slips through our fingers. And that takes us to meaninglessness, because if you can't grasp and hold on to a single meaning, then you're left with meaninglessness. And it's that trip between different states of meaning during the course of our journey that is really the quest of each of us, I believe. But we still have to know we're never going to get there.
And my point of this podcast is that there are two sides to meaninglessness. One is very meaningful, and one becomes a social evil. And I think that my point here is that meaninglessness is integral to the human soul, and you can call an analog to it as being suffering. As Gandhi said, suffering is the badge of the human race. And for those of you who've suffered, whether it's grief or physical stuff, all the meanings in the world don't mean a damn thing, I can tell you, when you're in the midst of really extreme pain. So it's about this place where we learn from pain. We don't just push it away. It's this place where we learn from the love of nothingness allows us to be free. I think, Marianne, you kind of intoned about that. And that this whole concept of meaninglessness spiritually is important. Socially, it's evil. And it's important to see both sides of this. This is another place where the paradox kisses its own ass. Because today we are at, the America and the world are at a crisis of meaning. And it's both spiritual and social. I think of the school shootings and the students that kill other students. Their lives have become full of ennui. You know, a big sigh of nothingness. So today there's this necessity to be honest on all fronts, to address both the positive and negative side of nothingness that is the root of all being, life, and consciousness, and to recognize that the depth and the truest meanings will not arrive without meaninglessness. Again, we don't know everything there is about meaning. We're still even trying to uncover what that is for the human being, especially in a universe that has no meaning unto itself. We're applying that. And now we're back at the spiritual journey of how do we apply our meaning so they're most in accord with what the truth and the reality of what is happening is. So I'm going to suggest meaninglessness sucks in this graceful kind of way. And in the Western world, we've turned it, the Catholic Church is a great example. They turned this via negativa into asceticism. They turned meditation into mortification. It's an amazing way that you twist meanings so that you don't really have to address the meaninglessness side of them when it is, I keep going back to Jesus. Unless you push the seed into the dark, it's not going to grow. The same with the human being. Marianne, are you still there?
I am still here. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah. What do you say to all this?
I think that something you said about I think meaning can be a double-edged sword. So we can find meaning, pain can lead us to meaninglessness, and pain can take us into a place of disconnection. And through that process, we can create some kind of meaning in our lives. But we can also twist that, and those meanings can become evil in and of themselves. Things that, I start to think about people that place meaning in revenge or place meaning in hate, and they start to believe that that's something that is very much ordained.
So are you saying they need? Are you
lives.
saying they need a dose of darkness? That what was it? Master Eckhart said, "What is this darkness? What is its name? Call it an aptitude for sensitivity. Call it a rich sensitivity which will make you whole. Call it your potential for vulnerability." And what you're saying to me, because this is a podcast on meaninglessness, not meaning, is those
Right.
people's meaning has fallen short in such a way that perhaps only darkness will wake them.
They will need to find that nothing matters before they can find that everything matters. And so I think that quote is very apropos. Yes.
Well, and that's, I guess I really want to, because I don't like my meaninglessness. It sucks. It hurts. It's grievous. Go ahead, Bob.
I want to go back to the idea that meaninglessness is a social evil, because I think that there's a couple ways to look at meaninglessness. Sociologists very early on used the term anomie to define the state in which we've lost our connections, lost our support groups, whether it's family, whether it's job, whether it's churches, whatever. When we've lost those connections, we feel alone. Now that's the what I think you're getting at when you talk about the social evil of meaninglessness. There's a different way to look at meaninglessness, and that's when you, as I was saying earlier, you are taking this journey and you realize that anything you assign meaning to falls short of what is really out there. And that's when you accept meaninglessness as the state of movement along the journey. And I think that when we assign meaning to something, whether it's politics, the church, again, work, money, whatever, those are what in the Old Testament were being referred to as idols. When we begin to worship those idols and realize that they're just and fail to realize that they're just steps along the way.
Yeah.
And we give ourselves up to those rather than keep going on this journey and the quest to find higher levels of meaning.
Yeah. And now we're back on the same, you just elucidated in a different way what I guess I failed to elucidate at the beginning, which is there's two sides to meaninglessness. And there is a social evil side. It's the side that causes one child to take a semi-automatic weapon and kill another child. That's evil in my view. And the lack of meaning there is a symptom of the crisis of our time. And we've talked, and as a mythopoet, we've talked about how the narratives and the stories, we're in a whole new place of reevaluating our meanings, if you will, and seeing that some of them, for me as a Southern boy, I'll tell you, a crap load of meanings have been pulled out from under me like a rug. And it's it's been an amazing soul situation for me on that. However, it's taken me to a place, and this is what I think the positive side, when we own that, when we can begin to address that half the school shootings, the 7,000 kids who've killed each other, if we begin to see those as a crisis of meaning and start evaluating how it is we're telling our kids the story of their life within the context of the greater life that they find themselves in. You see, the religion's not working anymore. Philosophy's not working anymore. Politics isn't working anymore. For some reason, Marvel Comics is working pretty good. So there's this whole side of things that to me is being redone. But we can't redo unless we see that we've missed the mark. And missing the mark is where we can find meaninglessness. It's kind of the what the F, you know what I mean? You throw up your hands and go, nothing I do works, what the hell? And at that point, you begin to reach, what was it Rilke said at one of my opening quotes? I want to get out there beyond all that. And that's where that's where the new is, that's where tomorrow is. Go ahead, Marianne.
Well, I was going to say, and I think that the first thing we have to do is acknowledge that we are the ones that are assigning the meaning. We are the ones that are doing this. And I liked what you said, Bob, about this being a journey, because as we start to recognize that it is us that is imposing the meaning on the circumstances and the things that are happening in the world, then we can come to understand that by the same token, we could be wrong. And that's where I think we run into that meaninglessness, because when you start to acknowledge that you could be wrong in the meanings that we have been taught through all of those institutions, which are all falling apart right now, and we're realizing that they do not hold the answers, that we are in this new place of trying to assign new meaning as a collective. And right.
All right, we've lost Marianne. So I think both Bob and Marianne have brought out a really important point, and the word that Bob used was connected. Within my tradition, it's called being separated from God. And that's when the meaning falls out. And people who lose their faith have basically been separated from this archive of knowledge, if you will, of understandings that no longer seem to resonate in their being. And that is a very pregnant place to be, to give new birth, new understandings to who we are and what we are. And I want to suggest that that's exactly what's happening today. It's exactly what's happening today. Marianne, are you still with us?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, but you're in and out.
Hello?
Bob, what do you have to say?
Oh, well, again, I think that that once we accept that we can't know, but that we have to keep asking, then we see meaninglessness in a totally different way. But there's another interesting paradox that can get thrown in here, and that's when you assume that the meanings that you find are going to be temporary, but still have vitality in the moment. And that's when certain things like synchronicity can come in, because even though we're individuals, little tiny specks in the universe, we're interacting with that universe. And sometimes, maybe very often, that we don't even realize that the meaning that we see in a certain situation can cause the universe to begin to react to us around that coalescing of meaning. And even though it's going to be temporary, because it's going to move on and we're going to see that that's not the whole story and so forth, it's still a learning experience. And it becomes almost awe-inspiring in the sense that we can continue this journey from meaning to meaninglessness to meaning to meaninglessness, and know that it's perfectly natural, and we're with the universe in this, in what's happening to us.
You
Amen.
know, and not only is it a learning experience, I think, but it's also an evolutionary experience. It interacts with us, then we are shaping the world. We
Yes.
are affecting things, and so we matter. So things do have meaning.
Yeah. And I want us to connect back up to a couple things. One, that Bob, you brought up almost like a cycle of moving in and out of meaning and meaninglessness. And that's because meaning is always reiterating itself. It's updating itself. It's like a computer that's on a 20-second update cycle. And that's happening in your brain all the time, whether you want to be aware of it or not. And of course, part of this podcast is we want you to become more aware of it, to participate in it, and for you to catch some of those unconscious flits and fonts that sometimes slip by, and we don't get to see those parts of ourselves. But I want us to see that the depth of nothingness is directly related to the experience of everythingness. That there is a point, and this is where I think Buddha was talking about. There, you know, it's the 0 point of receptivity, and you suspend all meanings and judgments in order to get it. And I've shared this story before. When I was 18 and in the service, I was on a bus in New York. There was this funny guy, bald dude with a robe sitting across the aisle. And I look out the window and there's a guy pissing on the corner. And I look at the robe guy and go, tell me the human race isn't going to hell in a handbasket. And I point out there, and the guy looks over out my window and he goes, or maybe it's just a man urinating on a corner. You see, how do we see things without this overlay so that we can appropriate them in their most realist form, their truest form? And I'm suggesting meaninglessness is this gap, this synapse where the paradox kisses its own ass, if you will. And that meaning and meaningless are in this unbelievable dance. And I'm going to suggest that dance is a quality of consciousness itself. This is the place. The universe doesn't do that anywhere else except in our brains. And this is an amazing dance. And the way I see it is this connection separation piece. We're in our meaningful universe, and then all of a sudden we're outside of it, and we go, WTF, what does anything mean anything? Why does it matter at all? And posing that question, something new emerges, and that's the word, emerges. See, we have to trust that process of emergence and not think we can do it. That was the problem with asceticism, you see. They thought they could control their feelings. They could spend all their time, and they couldn't. That meditations turned into mortifications, where if you didn't control your feelings, you whipped yourself. You wore a hair shirt to keep yourself irritated all the time so that you stay aware. All these things were misappropriations of meaninglessness. And meaninglessness misappropriates the world when we don't address it. And Bob, my comment to everything both you and Marianne said is what we're doing here is giving our best guess. We're not trying to sell anybody any point of view. We're just saying, man, we've been thinking about this stuff for a long time, and this is my best guess. Marianne, do you have any final comments in this wish-wash of techno intermittence?
Yes, well, and I will try to get this to come through, but it doesn't really matter anyway because there's no meaning, right? But I think with the whole idea of, and I'm going to speak personally here, it was only when I gave up trying to find meaning in anything and everything that I was able to find that seed that's deep within each one of us. I believe that is deep within each one of us, that exist beyond all of the, and I discovered that whole concept of me trying to understand the way the world works and coming to a place of meaninglessness, that there is no need to understand. There is only a need to experience.
Amen. Bob,
So
how about you? Final
that's
comments?
what I will leave.
Well, I'm going to kind of disagree a little bit with Marianne. I think there's a need to understand. I think that's part of the human experience. Now, I think that where we run the risk of getting too attached to our current understanding, and that's back to the metaphor of worshiping an idol, because our understanding is always going to be limited. It's the acceptance of those limitations and the idea that we can move through meaninglessness toward a new level of meaning that is, I'll say it again, it's a journey that we're all on. And I think that what really harms us is the attachment. Whatever that meaning we find, if we attach too much to it, then suddenly we're lost in the worship of an idol.
Amen. And that puts us squarely in a place of where we both need to understand and we need to be able to let go of our need to understand. It's an amazing thing. And here's the piece of all of that that's amazing to me, because I found it in myself when I was very young, and it's been salvific. It's called playfulness. It's called not taking oneself too seriously and yet being as sincere as one can genuinely be. Wow, how do we do that? Well, you got to make a big ass of yourself. You got to be willing to make a damn fool out of yourself. You got to be willing to stand up and say, what? You got to be able to do that and not hold on to it, but be playful. I'll be honest, I've offended a lot of people, and I've gotten away with it. Why? Because I was playful. I've offended mayors, congressmen, I mean right up close, where they knew who I was and they still know who I am. The city council, oh my God, I offended them so bad. I had one of them have to come to me and tell me how to behave within a civil way. You see, playfulness is the ability to let go and let be and still act. So our next podcast, playfulness. And hey, get in touch with me, Redhawkthedeepend at gmail.com. Love to hear from you. God's peace and many blessings.